Welcome to all businesses, industry associations and government departments joining us from across Australia today. Welcome. My name is Readiness. I'm the Commercial GM of the Food and Agribusiness Industry Growth Centre, Readiness, FIAL. First, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we virtually gathered here today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. For those of you who don't know FIAL, just very quickly, we're a not-for-profit organisation that was established by the Australian government to facilitate the development and growth of the food and agribusiness industry. FIAL is a catalyst that encourages the food sector to collaborate and grow the share of Australian food in the global marketplace. There's an agenda on the screen here. Very quickly, we are very lucky to have Bing Liu, who is Australian Trade Commissioner, and she will give us an update on what is happening on the ground in China at the moment and some of the challenges with lockdowns and economy and some of the opportunities that are starting to emerge within the food and beverage space in China. We also have Sarah Cheng, who is the Director of China and Beyond, who will run through various opportunities and how to enter the China market, but also how to run a successful export business in market. We will move on to supply chain. We have Ollie Van Heusen from Maersk. He specializes in supply chain, and he will give us an update on the freight, both air and sea, and some of the challenges in getting your product to China. And finally, we also have IP and brand protection, which will be covered with Diana today. Very important. If you don't have your IP and brand in place and all your legalities in place prior to entering the market, we recommend that you wait to get all your ducks in a row first. So Molly, if you can remove the agenda. Finally, before we get started, we as per the FIAL numbers or the Food Innovation Australia numbers, we have 180,000 growers, farmers and processors feeding more than 80 million people across Australia and overseas. The sector wants solutions that deliver tangible outcomes in accelerating commercially driven support at a time when the world keeps on moving and changing, and there's so many different challenges that we're facing these days. So our mandate is very simple. We're looking to facilitate tailored events. We have a platform, a digital platform, which is free, and I highly encourage everyone to register onto the Australian Food and Beverage Catalogue. We, following from this webinar, we have a business matching event with China, and we have a whole bunch of activities in the pipeline for numerous other business matching opportunities and virtual exhibitions as well too moving forward. So if you're not registered, I highly encourage you to do that, and we will share the link for the platform. Very simple. It only takes about 10-15 minutes to create a profile on the platform. Look, finally, FIAL will continue to implement real solutions to sustain, support and grow the industry. And on that note, I will pass on to Bing Liu, Senior Australian Trade Commissioner, who she's joining us today from Shanghai. Bing, over to you. Thank you. She's not back in the next few seconds. We'll get Sarah to jump in. Sarah, I think the internet connection in Shanghai is not working the best. Let's give it another few more seconds. No, look, yeah. Sarah, okay. I might as well get you to start your presentation. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Rod. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to share our view on the China opportunities, the trend, and the distribution models. So my name is Sarah Chen. I'm the Executive Director of China and Beyond. Let me share my screen now. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Probably that's been okay. Yeah. So we will talk about the market compliance first. as some of you may know, from the 1st of January this year, China General Administration of Customs require all foreign exporters in the food and beverage sector to be registered with China when you export to China. So Decree 248 requires the food establishment, the manufacturer, the producer, to be registered with China. If you are snack products, biscuits, confectionaries, or some prepackaged food, you can register with Chinese government directly or through the agents in China. But for most products, you have to launch the registration through Australian government. Decree 249 require food exporters, even you're just a trading company and agent, and you're exporting to China, food and beverage to China, you also need to be filed with China. So the difference is for the food establishment, it is a registration. That means the Chinese government assess your capabilities, background, credentials, etc. But as food exporters, trading company, when you export to China, it's a filing process. It's pretty simple administrative process, but it does require you to do this earlier rather than later, because with the recent lockdown, the whole process is taking much longer time than, say, last year, end of last year. So, and talking about China market, currently China market are mostly driven by in the food sector by the new policies, but also with all the changes during the COVID. As some of you may know, China adopted the 3 children per couple. So now per couple is allowed to have 3 children rather than 2. And also with the registration requirement for food establishment and food exporters, plus the redistribution of wealth. We use a quotation mark because Chinese government is encouraging some sectors, especially in the production sector, while it's cracking down some other sectors, for example, part of financial services. That is creating a new kind of distribution of wealth from certain sectors to other sectors. So all these new policies actually create some new opportunities for exporters to tap into China. For example, in terms of the product demand, in terms of the entry barrier, in terms of the target sector, etc. During the COVID, as what has happened here in Australia, there are lots of changes with lifestyle. More people work remotely from home. People have this sense of insecurity, not quite sure what is going to happen, how long this COVID will last. But most importantly, is the disrupted supply chain, international supply chain. Today, actually, China has less foreign brands in the consumer goods sector in China than pre-COVID period because of interruption in the international supply chain. So from that perspective, it's good timing to look at China market. When Rod invited me to present at this webinar, I asked him why, when everybody was talking about, well, they are concerned about China market, he wants to run this. He said, okay, Sarah, we got so many inquiries about from Chinese buyers looking for Austrian products. I said, okay, that's exactly what we were experiencing. We got inquiries every day from our sales network for Austrian food and bev, just because we don't have enough brands to sell to the China market. So all these changes create new consumer behaviors, new product demand, and new business models, which I will share in the next few slides. So with all these policy changes and COVID, we see a few major new behaviors from consumers, Chinese consumers. Live streaming started in China a few years ago, live streaming sales, but it has really boomed in the past 18 months. The Chinese government does scrutinize the live streaming sector. For example, the qualification of the company who run this, who sell into the C sector, But live streaming becomes something like you must do if you're taking it into China. Whether you do this directly, work with your distributors and agents in China to run live stream sales. It's a way of marketing, it's a way of direct sales to end consumers. Chinese consumers also becoming more sophisticated. During COVID, they are looking for some niche brands. You don't need to be a large established brand here in Australia. As long as your products fit into the demand and requirement of certain market segments, there's a good potential. And also personalized products is in high demand. And also, of course, there are lots of health concerns during COVID. So health sector is growing, but the demand is growing, but the supply currently, and the supply chain is an issue. As you may know, if you are working in this space, for healthy food or health supplements, for example, you have to sell to China pretty much through cross-border e-commerce channels, while the current supply chain and Chinese government regulations highly restrict this sector. So not restrict, highly regulate this sector. So if you're looking at this sector, it's good potential, but we need to work out with you what's the best way to make sure you comply with the government requirement to sell into China. Essential food is a growing sector. It's partially driven by the Chinese consumers' demand for quality products and health concern during COVID, but also partially driven by the Chinese government's national strategy. We have noticed lots of purchasing from state-run enterprises, and including the increased purchasing from the National Reserve for food and oil. So we have seen lots of sales and a high increase in edible oil, in grain flour, in those essential food, cereal, oats, etc. But also those products that is a little indulgent, has a good sale. People love to have something nice during the COVID. So currently at the top of the Chinese shopping list, this is something we collected by working with Chinese buyers on a daily basis. So as I mentioned earlier, essential food is highly demanded at this stage currently. Unique prepared food and drinks, especially for the gift sector and for the online retail sector. Alcohol, we do have the barrier for the wine sector. For example, Chinese government charge 220% import duty for wine, but for other products, the import duty is still zero for other alcoholic products. Gin, rum, low alcoholic drinks is in high demand, pre-mixed alcohol drinks. Coffee is a sector that currently we are actually chasing coffee manufacturers in Australia. We're talking to every coffee manufacturers in Australia. There's a high demand for coffee. It's a new trend in China. Dairy products, of course, still in high demand. A little bit more specific about essential food. These are the products that Chinese distributors and agents and retailers are looking for, both on the cereals, grain flour, edible oil, frozen seafood, meat, and dairy products. Unique prepared food and drinks. So we put this into a few categories. Health food, due to the health concern. Snacks, confectionaries. I won't go into very details about this. And drinks, especially coffee and juice. For these unique prepared food and drinks, there are quite a few different ways for you to tap into the China market. Of course, you can export directly to the retailers, to end consumers, by working with the local distributor or a service provider in China. Or you do, if you're a manufacturer, you can of course provide private label service. Co-branding, we actually haven't seen Australian brand has co-branded with any Chinese distributor, but this is a model we encourage businesses to look into to gain the commitment from the Chinese partners. Cross-border e-commerce is pretty much the only choice for some products, especially in the health food sector. And alcohol, the strong spirits, as I mentioned earlier. Wine, the Chinese government's restriction is pretty much for 2 liters and below. So if you have a bulk type wine, large bottles, for example, 3 liters, we recently saw 3 liters wine from Australia, and that is having good sales in China. And also, you may look at the option to bottle those products overseas. We actually are talking to multiple bottlers in China to find the best solution for this Australian wine sector to work with China. Of course, as mentioned earlier, low alcoholic drinks, pre-mixed low alcoholic drinks. So for these sectors, you can work with the distributors in China, but we encourage you to look at other models. I will explain why later. So the direct export, B2B e-commerce, and B2C direct export to end consumers in China, again, co-branding and private label opportunities. Coffee, for the coffee brand, there are multiple models, as we mentioned earlier, to work with China. But some key success factors is we can talk about the natural ingredients. This suitable packaging is very important. If you go to the Chinese retail store, the packaging is really, in a way, nice for the Chinese consumers. So sometimes we feel Australia's packaging are not, I would say, colorful enough. We don't need to look like Chinese brand. We're still Australian brand, but we probably need to cater to some preference of the consumers there and tailor our packaging a little bit. We do need to find a unique selling point. Chinese market is kind of putting coffee drinkers into different tiers, and then for each different tiers of more sophisticated coffee buyer, for example, you have to have a unique selling point for that sector. For some beginners of coffee drinkers, lots of beginners, but they are moving up that chain very quickly. And what's your key selling point? Channel marketing is critical for coffee. You may know that when an Australian SME go to China, it's like a big fish in a, like a small fish in a big sea. Then you can easily spend huge financial resources if you try to do all kinds of marketing. So we highly recommend companies to look at channel marketing. If you're selling through a certain channel, only conduct marketing, highly target that sector through that channel. Dairy products, we know it has been doing really well in recent years. Still, there's high demand. But what we need to do is for Australian companies is we need to look at, try to differentiate from the market. For example, high nutrition products, like if it is high in calcium, etc. The dairy snacks is a sector that we don't see Australian companies work much in this space. For example, dairy bars, those dairy snacks, people can have any time when they need it, and it does not require cold supply chain. So dairy snacks is in high demand. UHT milk, again, is still in high demand. So with those products and opportunities, especially prepacked food, those sector and snacks, etc. There are quite a few emerging distribution models. It has been existed in the market for a while, but now it's a critical time to really look into those models more closely. One is the manufacturer to retailer model. The reason is the China market is really becoming really competitive. If you go through the traditional channel, export to an importer who is potentially probably a national distributor, then go to sub-distributor, wholesaler, then retailer. In some cases, you have a regional wholesaler, provincial wholesaler, then the wholesaler for a specific city, then go to retailer. Then most likely your ex-works price will be say if your ex-works price is $1 or FOB price is $1, most likely your retail price will be $4 or $5. But it still seems nobody's claiming to make big profit margin along that value chain, just the chain is too long. So in that case, the way to be competitive in the market is to really cut the value chain short and go, if possible, directly to the retailers and supported by the local partners in China to make it happen. How to tap into that sector, how to sell to the retailers directly, and how to sell the end consumers directly. I think the key way is to work with local partner in China who can enable you to do that. Another model is S to B to C, or actually it's also S to C to C. So that means as supplier, as exporter, you work with China, has certain parties to handle the order implementation, etc. But you leverage local marketing channels or a sales agent to sell to the end consumers directly. In that case, you cut the distributors, wholesaler, etc. You go to end consumers directly. The only person in the middle is the marketing and sales agent that help you to promote your products to their sales channels. During the COVID, especially recent lockdown, community sales is a large sector, both online and offline, because China has been adopting this zero cases policy in the past 2 years for COVID. So in lots of cases, these supply logistics is a big issue. And then people even cannot travel beyond their own residential complex or go beyond their own local district. So the local underground sales, local offline sales become a huge sector. So how to work with those agents in that community to sell the sector is critical. But again, this is a little bit difficult for our exporters to work directly. As you may not have to communicate with contacts, and it's pretty hard to manage her supply. So the best way is to work with partners in China to enable the sales into that sector. I would like to quickly summarize the key success factors. As the stable and scalable production capacity is key. We have learned quite a bit lessons by working with some brands. When we grow their market, say in 12 to 18 months after the initial trial of the market, then we quickly found that our suppliers here in Australia cannot meet the demand of our required by our sales channels. So that means we lose the retail channels, we lose the consumers. So if you are looking at China market, then probably really need to assess your production capacity, whether you only want to focus on certain channel and work on the niche market and niche channel, or you want to sell to a broader market, and then can your production capacity be upscaled, say in 12 to or 6 to 12 months or 12 to 18 months. Second is the short supply chain. Actually, we need a shorter supply chain, shorter value chain to be competitive price-wise, and to ensure you have profit margin, decent profit margin, but still the price is competitive in the market. A smart and unique selling point, and also a capable and committed business partner in China to implement your strategy. I talk about the S to B to C distribution model, the manufacturer to retailer model, the community sales model, but all those models require you have someone to handle the import procedure, implement your order in China, ship the products to the retailers and community sales agent, manage the customer relations. So if you don't have your own sales office on the ground, you probably need to find such service providers and partners to work with you to sell into China. And in talking about business partner, I really would like to leverage this opportunity to do a quick self-introduction about China and beyond. We are an import and export solution provider. So we have service offices in India, Vietnam, Japan, and China. But also we have our own trading company, which is fully licensed to import, distribute, wholesale, and retail, both online and offline consumer goods, especially food and bevs in the food and bev sector. So our head office here in Sydney, and then when we work with any brand, we work from the very first step to look at market compliance to make sure you can export products into China. We work with you to handle your registration, product registration, supplier registration, and then work with you on the pricing structure, and then take the products and brand to China and leverage our sales channel to sell into China. So our capabilities, we have more than 20,000 distributors and wholesalers and large retail chains in our sales channels, more 600,000 sales agents to work on the B2C sector. And then we also have more than 2,000 KOLs in our network. As I mentioned, we are fully licensed to handle food and bag in China. We have on-the-ground team in Beijing. We have the warehouse, both bonded and non-bonded warehouse in China to handle the logistic. And we have, and our core team has worked with over 1,000 brands in the China market. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you again to FIAL and Rod's invitation. And I look forward to working with you and also take your question during the Q&A session. I will also later to put my website and LinkedIn links in the chat sector. So the best way is you probably add me on LinkedIn and talk to me anytime. If you want to have a quick chat about whether your product is suitable for China, we can tell you honestly what we think about the opportunity. We can do a little free trial for you to test your samples in China. So anyway, looking forward to talking to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, there's a very comprehensive breakdown, and I think my takeaway from that is that there's still quite a few opportunities in market in China, but you need to be very careful as to the distribution models and the partners that you deal with. So yeah, so Sarah is well conversed in that space, and I encourage everyone to reach out. She's very happy to provide support and help. Look, from a FIAL perspective as well too, we will continue to run virtual events to connect you to potential buyers in China as well too. There's definitely, I've seen an increase in inquiries as well too, especially in that health and wellness space and innovation. So yeah, yeah, no, look, it's not it's a bit of a journey, I guess, of getting the products, food products to China. But now we unfortunately we had some technical difficulties before with Bing Liu, who is the Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner from Austrade. She is back online now. Hopefully we have a better connection this time around, Bing. But look, thank you for your time. I just pass over to you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I'm going to share my presentation screen first. Okay, can everyone see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. So sorry for the technical glitch before, and since I'm based in Shanghai, I got 2 sets of firewall to go through to get to reach out to you, to the audience. So my apologies. So my presentation today will touch on the following topics: the China's economic, basically in 1 or 2 sentences, because the time constraint, and especially in the context of the pandemic, and the China food and beverage overview, including the chapter, which is the free trade agreement. Then I'll just touch a little bit about the China lockdown, and then a bit of a trend on how food and beverage is going in the city, and also quickly introduce Austrade. First, about China economics. So the financial industry reports and our discussion with business indicate China's COVID measures are increasingly impacting the economy. Although China's GDP grew by about 4.8% in the first quarter, March data shows a much bleaker picture, as the recent wave of lockdowns and other restrictions only really started to bite at the macro level. The International Monetary Fund has cut China's GDP growth estimate for 2022 from 4.8% to 4.4%, citing a worsening economic slowdown. The quarter saw strong investment in infrastructure and manufacturing, but limited growth in property sector and consumption. So the March factory activity showed 5% growth. Unemployment rate, however, is at 5.8%, the highest since May 2020, and retail sales data down about 3.5%. It's the first fall since July 2020. Point to a tough outlook ahead, as consumption, real estate, and export are likely to weaken further. Despite China's trade actions against some of our exports, Australia trade, however, continues to grow, underpinned by enduring economic complementarities. China remained Australia's largest goods trading partner in 2021, accounting for 34% of Australia's total two-way goods trade. So the two-way goods trade was worth about 271 billion in 2021, 17% higher than in 2022, driven by export of iron ore worth about 126 billion. So goods export to China rose by 21% to 179 billion. Excluding iron ore, goods export were down about 0.5% to 53 billion. Goods import from China also rose by about 8% to 92 billion in 2021, driven by increase in imports of cars and computers. So you can see China is still a very important market to Australia. So I'm next going to talk about the China food and beverage overview. I think Sarah has covered most of it, so I'm going to be very brief. And China is currently the world's largest import food market by value. Imported food is expected to play a considerably important role to continue meeting China's food security needs and rising customer demands. In echoing the government's Healthy China 2030 initiative, we are seeing a strong shift to cooking and eating healthier, quality and varied meals at home. This has been accelerated by the pandemic and various lockdowns in a range of cities. Australian products are typically niche market products, superior quality and higher price. Since COVID-19, Australia's reputation for safe and sustainable produced food is continued to be a great asset. The list of agri-products subject to formal and informal restrictions by the Chinese authority has grown markedly over the last 18 months or so. On the formal side, we see barley and wine, and on the informal side, lobster, cotton, meat, and others. There is also COVID-19 related quarantine and inspection measures for imported chilled or frozen food, resulting in lengthy custom clearance in some cases. For example, for Australian frozen beef and lamb containers, the custom clearance procedure usually takes 20 to 30 days to clear. But now, due to the pandemic, Shanghai port probably is the worst at the moment. The fees are increasing, and the clearing these products is about 40 days or even longer. Yet, despite these measures, many of our egg and food and beverage categories continue to do very well here, including live animals, grains, dairy, for example, remain strong. And we are now seeing subsectors like the plant-based protein market and the packaged food sector, predominantly in premier processed food, particularly in breakfast cereal and others that also Sarah has shared a list of those foods are becoming really popular and taking off in China very rapidly. With the rapid development of e-commerce, online retail presence combined with online marketing and social media promotion on imported packaged food is well accepted by the Chinese customers. So I just want to briefly talk about a major campaign that Australia holds every year, Festival Australia or Shine with Australia. That's just how we brand the activity. Festival Australia is an Australian initiative designed to promote Australian industry capability and premier Australian products and lifestyle through coordinated promotional and networking events. FOA has run 3 times since 2019. The festival has a strong emphasis on digital promotion and is backed by a significant digital media and communication strategy. During our most recent campaign, we have achieved over 105 million impressions, about 100,000 engagements, and 90% positive sentiment. We conducted 11 live streaming activities, reached more than 73 million people, and we have over 1,200 online, offline participants at the B2B events. So the coming financial year, what is new for us? We are preparing China Australian Food and Beverage Directory. So if you are interested, please reach out to us. We test content on new platforms, including Douyin, which is TikTok, the China version, and the Little Red Book to increase our impact and reach to the Chinese consumers. And the Xiaomi for Australia Festival from August to October 2022 includes retail promotions, e-commerce, and nutrition product promotion for embed missions to the West and the others. We also have a mini program on the WeChat, which profiles more than 500 companies and facilitates online business matching. We have also insights video and classroom videos targeting Australian business and Chinese audience respectively. The Australian classroom series has accumulated an aggregate impression of 6 million. So if you are considering exporting to China, please be aware the requirement for exporting food products to China have changed. I hear that Sarah has touched about the two probably most important changes, Decree 248 and Decree 249. And we have information on DAWA's website. And if you have any questions, or please visit DAWA's website or get in touch with us. So this is a very important change you have to take notice. About FTA, which is the China Australian Free Trade Agreement, which came into effect on the 20th of December 2015, has opened new opportunity for Australian products in China. It's about 5,000 food and beverage products that have dropped its tariff to zero, that have a big list, including elimination of 15% tariff on natural honey, and it's up to 20% tariff on honey-related products, and elimination of 10 to 25% on macadamia nuts, for example, almonds, walnuts, pistachios, and also elimination of 10 to 90% tariff on ice cream, lactose, and milk albums. So this is just some examples. Other major agriculture commodities like beef and dairy will be dropping their tariff by 2024 and 2026 respectively. The Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade has developed an extremely comprehensive Fta Portal that lists the current tariff rates and schedule for FTA or any other free trade agreement for a market. It also lists a separate section on rules of origin and documentation needed to qualify for a particular tariff line, as well as the context for relevant customs authorities. FTA has been opening the doors wider for Australian business to China and is working to secure our place as a globally competitive home for productive Chinese investment. FTA gives Australian business a significant advantage over our other competitors, for example, in the China market, including the US, the EU, and Canada. Since FTA came into effect on the 20th of December 2015, it has opened sorry, the next slide. So China experience is, we're going to talk a little bit about the Shanghai lockdown. So China is experiencing its worst COVID outbreak since the start of the pandemic, resulting in a citywide and partial lockdowns across the country. In the case of Shanghai, it's a completely whole city lockdown. And the cities are undergoing mandatory testing, and non-essential businesses are required to close or work from home. And here in Shanghai, we've endured a hard lockdown for over 1 month, and it is severely hampering activities, particularly at the Shanghai main cargo airport and ports terminal, where the operations continue to be severely impacted by storage limitation, transportation bottlenecks, and labor shortages, leading to an increased cost and impacted supply chains. The impact of Shanghai lockdown on Australia business operation is widespread. Many food and beverage companies are facing delays to deliver after clearing customs or are unable to transport their goods from the customs to their warehouse due to the lockdown. Some Australian businesses are electing to divert their shipment from Shanghai to other ports to clear and unload. These experiences are consistent with those of other foreign companies operating in China at the moment. Shanghai's hard lockdown, which has caused food shortage across the city, this is unimaginable, but it's in reality, and which has forced consumers to use new shopping methods to compensate for insufficient government rations and last mile delivery obstacles. Fears of a Shanghai-style hard lockdown has had many across the country stockpiling long shelf life foods, including frozen items. The frozen food industry was already estimated to reach about 70 billion Australian dollars by 2027. The recent outbreak is anticipated to accelerate this trend, with necessity now the key driver. The shift to long life shelf food and frozen items presents a good opportunity for Australian food and beverage brands to expand their product lines beyond the fresh foods. So last but not least is how Austrade can help you. So Austrade is here to promote Australian business and exports to the China region, and we continue to build relationships in the market. We have a strong presence on Chinese social media and run a number of digital campaigns throughout the year. We know it has been tough. The bilateral relationship is changing. Things are often changing rapidly for particular products and sectors. We are doing our best to work across the Team Australia, including DFAT, Agriculture, Treasury, etc., to provide Australian business with the latest information we have. We are adamant business-led engagement is crucial, and business can help send the message that China-Australian relationship has much to offer. And we are seeing business transactions still being executed with deals getting done. And we also work with our allies, including state governments and business bodies such as FIAL. We remain active in supporting business and their partners in their efforts to undertake investment and trade with Australia. Our website has lots of updated information about the market situation and market insight. Please visit our website. We also listed the recently reformed Export Market Development Grant. If you have not heard about it, please find it out on our website. If you are looking to other markets outside of China, which I would suggest that market diversification at any time is a sound business strategy, but particularly at the moment, we can also help. We've got people in more than 80 offices around the world with profound knowledge of local market. We are only a phone call or email away. Please reach out. And this is different ways we can contact us. Do contact us if you have interest in China. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bing, and a good prompt there for for everyone online to submit your products for the Australian Food and Beverage Directory. Good timing to mention that. Don't miss out, because I know a lot of companies sometimes forget and then they look back and go, I should have put that through. So send those details to Austrade to get on that directory. Look, and finally, Bing, I just wanted to say, we all hope that lockdowns are lifted shortly. We feel for you, and I'm in Melbourne, so I know what it's like to be in lockdown. So yeah, look, take care, and thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, now moving on to our next speaker for today, and this is an extremely important part of the overall export journey, which is supply chain. And we have Ollie van Heusen from Maersk, who is the market manager. He's based in Sydney, and he is going to give us a rundown on Maersk capabilities and some of the challenges and disruptions in market at the moment, and also hopefully how we can maybe there's some light at the end of the tunnel there as well too. Ollie, I'm not sure, but over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rod. Certainly hope so. Right, so good day, everyone. My name's Ollie Van Houston, and as Rod mentioned, I'm the Australia Export Market Manager for Maersk Oceania. So thanks a lot for having me today. I appreciate your time. Today, I'll be running through and highlighting some of the current disruptions we've seen in global shipping, specifically in China, but also throughout the world. Then looking at the steps moving forward post the COVID impacts and what's expected from the market to return to pre-COVID normalization. Then I'll run through some measures that we at Maersk and logistics in general are putting in place to show increased reliability and some helpful products that can mitigate the delays impacts and how we can turn these into opportunities in the export to trade environment. Right, so firstly, let's have a look at some of the current challenges, and even here locally, and we'll look at these from an ocean, air, and an inland perspective. Over the past 2 years, we've all had significant disruptions to our lives, and supply chains have especially been highlighted. The increase in government stimulus in many countries has led to an increase in consumer buying patterns, and this has led to an increase in global seaborne trade, causing demand to outstrip supply and contributed to the increase in rates we've seen recently. Major lanes of China to North America have seen high growth, and even imports from North Asia into Australia and Australian exports has caused spikes, increasing demand for the space on these lanes. Lockdowns globally, and as we continue to see in Shanghai, have led to manufacturing delays and transport shortages, not to mention a complete change in our workforce patterns. We see a lot of the impact in China at the moment being in the landside area of the supply chain, with factories being closed and reduced transport capacity on the roads. As been correctly alluded to before, this has led to quite a lot of delays at the port, although the port does remain operational. We're currently seeing delays for vessels berthing at between 4 and 5 days. Maersk continues calling China from Australia as planned, and we have a weekly service that runs there. On the air side, we see local airports and again through the inland supply chain being congested due to the lockdowns. So airlines have cancelled flights due to reduced passenger demand, and this has led to cargo rates pushing higher. It's also pushed the backlog back to origin of the cargo. And this is where the freight begins to accumulate, and we see the bottlenecks start to spread throughout the supply chain. I've touched on a couple of inland issues as a byproduct and the air and sea challenges here, but again, trucking in Shanghai is just under half its usual capacity at the moment, so a large impact there. And as being also touched on, the increase in testing delays and timeframes on the import of products. If we move on to the global view, I've highlighted here 3 overarching macro supply chain trends that have impacted global logistics in recent years. So firstly, we see the movement to embrace and simplify supply chains. Recently, we've seen the rise in importance in supply chain professionals to levels not seen before. Businesses want to simplify and partner to allow them to focus on what they do best. Secondly, we see a rise in new technology. The world's becoming more digital and connectability is increasing. And thirdly, we see the need for agility and speed. Speed to market, but also the agility to adapt when reaching problems and being more nimble to make changes in the supply chain. Now, as we move on to what the supply chain outlook post-COVID, it's important we don't focus too much on the what ifs, and we look more at the macroeconomic trends we see affecting the post-COVID world. On the air freight side, we see freight capacity strongly linked to the return of passenger travel. Currently, we see Brisbane Airport, as an example, at 25% of the capacity of pre-COVID levels. This translates to 25% of the aircraft capacity for cargo being available at the market. So as we receive reduced lockdowns and less border closures, we see a return to pre-COVID capacity in the global freight market. On the ocean side, we see new vessels and equipment orders coming online through 2023, and this will lead to an increase in capacity. On this slide, I've outlined some enablers from Maersk and the wider logistics industry that we've built around supply chain needs. Now, these topics are how we see the global recovery to ensure a renewed sense of normality. So agility, we want to ensure there's the most flexible solution so we can turn our disruptions into opportunities. Then there's viability. So ensuring everyone is kept in the loop by optimizing supply chain data. Reliability, as I mentioned earlier, a top focus for Maersk. And a special one of note here is sustainability, the ability to ensure that there is a green option in the market for ocean freight. Now, as we move on to measures to mitigate the disruptions on the export trade and seek opportunities through these disruptions, the first product to touch on is a Maersk product called Twill. So Twill is Maersk's online freight and logistics platform, which offers end-to-end solution, all moving on the Maersk network. It's targeted as a one-stop shop for new and existing small to medium exporters who don't need any previous logistics knowledge. It's a complete end-to-end solution, which is handled by us to allow you to focus on your core business and leave the logistics to Maersk as the supply chain managers. Now, this is a great example of how through the use and development of technology, shipping is looking to mitigate these disruptions and partner with all customers to take the problems out of exporting to new markets. This also helps facilitate cross-trade shipments between different countries. It offers a local transport service, customs clearance in 150 different countries, and transport of less than container loads, all 4 containers, depending on the customer's needs. We see this as a crucial product in mitigating disruptions in the logistics supply chain. It really allows customers to focus on their business and leave the movement of goods to the logistics provider. The next measure to reduce disruptions is schedule reliability. So this graph here on the left shows, or on the right, sorry, shows the average days delay on the Oceania to Asia trade. And on the left, it shows Maersk versus the market in terms of reliability. Now we can see the industry as a whole is improving, and this is a key priority for Maersk to ensure we reduce disruptions on exports to China. By having a more reliable schedule, we can better support our customers in their speed to market and reduce overall problems. On the air side, we see we've recently set up a temporary office location inside Beijing Airport. So this is helping support operational continuity for air freight imports. Measures such as this help combat the delays and ensure we can better communicate with our customers and be more transparent. So that's the end of my presentation for today. I hope I've shared some insight into the challenges in the China market from a supply chain perspective, and what measures that logistics companies and specifically Maersk are taking and have in place to ensure that these disruptions are reduced and we can turn them into opportunities. Thanks again for the opportunity. The disruptions throughout the pandemic have created opportunities for new products. We've seen accelerated industry transformation and created opportunities for new market entrants across all product categories. I understand that many of you joining today are considering international exports, and me and the team at Maersk are happy to help and willing to share additional information as needed and work together to help you realize ambitions to grow or begin. That includes both domestically here in Australia, as well as internationally into the China market. So thanks again. We will share these slides and feel free to reach out for anything. So thank you. Back to you, Rod.
Thank you, Ollie, and thank you for your presentation. Look, I think one of the elements that I always used to think as Maersk is just a shipping company. And that's kind of, I've dealt with Maersk in the past, very professional company, but they have these days an end-to-end, supply chain solutions. They got the technology as well too. And as you can see, they track all the DIFOT and they track everything, and they try to help the customers. It's not just wanting to get your business to get the container on the ship, but also they want to help you enter markets as well, to new markets. I've had a few conversations with the team at Maersk. We're going to continue to engage with them. And yeah, look, we just, I think we're all looking just to help as many food manufacturers, growers and suppliers to diversify the markets and enter new markets and potentially enter the China market. And you've had Sarah today, you had Bing, you've got Ollie from various different elements that can bring it all together. But one of the most important elements is the legalities and IP and brand protection. And we have Diane Liu from King Woods, she's a senior associate from King and Wood Mallesons, and she's going to run us through a few case studies and some of these scenarios on how you can protect your IP when entering the China market. Over to you, Diana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rod. We'll just bring over this presentation. And let that come up. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diana Liu, and I'm a lawyer specializing in intellectual property. As Rod mentioned, I'm a senior associate at King Wood Mallesons. My practice covers regulatory, enforcement, and brand protection matters and the full life cycle of intellectual property from registration to enforcement. My sector focus is in the healthcare, retail, and consumer goods sectors, and it's my pleasure to present with FIAL today. So an in-depth look at intellectual property and brand protection in China could take a while. In fact, we could probably go on for hours going into detail. So today I propose to do a brief overview of what mechanisms are available in China, briefly discuss a couple of case studies and issues that my clients have experienced, and some general practical questions that you may want to ask before doing business and exporting your goods into China. So firstly, let's have a look at what intellectual property encompasses. And there are generally 5 different mechanisms that protect your product brand, production, and information. Firstly, we'll have a look at copyright. So copyright protects the expression of ideas rather than the ideas themselves. And in Australia, there is free and automatic protection, but there is a system for registering copyright in China, which makes it easier for enforcement. Protection usually is limited for about 50 years after the life of the creator. And from experience, registration of copyright in China takes approximately 30 working days for photos and for product design. And you need to be able to demonstrate who the owner is, who created the copyright, when it was created, for example. And so if you're engaging a designer for your packaging, it's important to have relevant contracts in place that assign you or the business owner the rights over the packaging and imaging. Secondly, we'll have a quick chat about trade secrets that protect secret processes or techniques, usually in manufacturing products, or some of the famous recipes that we know for KFC or for Coca-Cola that no one actually knows the full recipe for. So this protects information as confidential information, and there is perpetual protection, so it's not time limited, but it's not useful for products that can be reverse engineered or copied, but it can be critical for your product or business success. And so the main ways that business owners can protect them are through limiting access to the facilities, establishing security procedures, having written agreements and NDAs in place, restricting access to information, so it's a need-to-know basis for those key personnel, and not letting anyone have the full picture. Patents, these protect inventions, including products, methods, materials, and processes that create your products. Again, this does not protect all inventions, but the invention itself must be new, inventive, and useful, and it should not be exploited before filing, because otherwise it then becomes public and then other competitors can access that information. It is a first to file system in China, and so registering is important. Disclosure, sale, or demonstration of an invention before filing a patent can jeopardize the novelty of the invention, so that's another thing that can be problematic. So make sure that you speak to a patent attorney or a law firm that specializes in patents before you register. The protection provided is limited in time, usually 20 years for a standard patent, and then 10 years for utility model and design patents. For branded products that are developed with the assistance of a consultant, such as an engineer, a formulator, or a graphic designer, generally speaking, you should ensure that there is a written agreement with them that addresses the scope of the project, the ownership of any process or formulation that is developed during the project, the maintenance of confidentiality or the process or the formulation, and assurance that the same or similar process or formulation has not been previously developed for another party. Designs, these protect the overall appearance of a product, example, its shape, its configuration, or its pattern. So the appearance must be new and differ from existing products. And again, public disclosure may jeopardize a design application. You register for a design and it becomes enforceable after examination and certification, just like in Australia. And in China, the maximum amount of time that it can be protected for is 10 years. And most examples we've seen for design protection in China is packaging, container shapes, and shapes for food products themselves. Now, trademarks, and this is by far the most common avenue through which brand owners look to protect and enforce their IP. These applications and registrations are also important in the context for not only using the trademarks on your products, but also packaging suppliers as well, who often require letters of authorization to apply the marks on pack. Now, in China, protection can be obtained through use alone, but generally rights are based on first to file. And there are many examples of clients who have struggled to register their marks because a pirate has managed to file a trademark in China before them. And there are obviously avenues to overcome that process, but it has been difficult and it can be costly if a pirate sits on a trademark that is important to your business. And so it's important when you are going to look into, say, China, you think about what goods and services are planned for that region, and you file an application for a trademark as soon as possible. So specifically in food, the types of intellectual property you may want to consider. So product formulation and recipes, we can have a look at protecting it through copyright, trade secrets, trademarks, or patents if there's a particular formulation or way of processing a particular product. Manufacturing and packaging, there are patents, designs, trade secrets, 3D trademarks, and copyright that we can use to protect the manufacturing and packaging stage. Marketing and branding, we have trademarks, copyright, and geographic indicators or certification marks. Now, these marks are used to indicate that a product comes from a particular region or that it's been certified by a particular body to be organic or vegan, or Australian wool, for example, has a particular certification mark that you can place on the product. And finally, with distribution, some mechanisms include trademarks, confidential information, and having existing contracts and supply agreements. Another aspect to consider is using a local language version of a particular brand, and to do so for those who may have access to a bilingual speaker, it's good to consider the Mandarin, Cantonese, and other major dialects in China to avoid a Chinese name that is inappropriate. I've used our firm's name as an example here. So the 5 elements of Feng Shui in Chinese are, wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And in our King and Wood Malison's name, we have a red circle representing fire, a blue circle representing water, and then the first 2 characters of our Chinese name, Jindu, you have your metal element, and then you have your earth and wood elements in the second character. And so these things just give a little bit more background and cultural meaning to particular brands and words, and Chinese consumers are also quite in tune with that sort of background. So IP systems around the world are all based on treaties, meaning that IP protection is about the same, 80 to 90% around the world. And this means that generally speaking, you should use the same IP protection strategy overseas as you would in China. China has acceded to most of the important international global IP treaties, such as the Berne Convention, the Paris Convention, PCT, TRIPS, and the Madrid Agreement. And so some tips to develop a robust IP protection strategy can be based on what you would use here in Australia, but tailor them for the Chinese market. You should register your IP and take the time to enforce your rights, and do your IP due diligence and know what else is out there in the Chinese market, and take advantage of the administrative system, which is quicker and cheaper than the court system. Touching briefly on enforcement, considerable progress has been made in recent years in relation to IP enforcement in China, and China is increasingly committed to better IP enforcement with less corruption and higher quality judges. China now has over 300,000 law enforcement officials and new guidelines with stricter penalties for IP violations, including the credit score system, which some of you may be familiar with. There are 2 reasons for this. Firstly, to build trust with suppliers and brand owners, as China is a market where historically counterfeit products have been able to flourish, but also to build trust with consumers, particularly in relation to safety concerns and issues of authenticity. The audience may be familiar with the devastating effect of infant formula many years ago in China, which has only increased the appetite for genuine products from Australia, as they are perceived to be of higher quality and having undergone strict quality control. So in particular, the case studies that I wanted to explore today are to do with trademarks, because that is where we have seen most of the activity. If a third party registers your brand before you do, then that third party actually has the right to sue you for trademark infringement. And it doesn't matter that you use it first or that you have a reputation in another country first. And so the issues that a lot of our clients have had include expensive negotiations with these pirates to obtain their trademarks back. A good example is the Chinese equivalent for Penfolds, which was registered by a third party, and the Treasury Wine Estates. Only option at the time was to either buy the brand back, which would have been very expensive, or commence legal proceedings, which, as a lawyer, I have to say also is quite an expensive option, but sometimes those are the only options that a brand owner will have against pirates. Penfolds was ultimately successful in its proceedings, but it is just another consideration to have. So some tips to enforce your IP in China. So the mechanisms are different in each country, but in China, ensure that your IP rights are protected. And so trademarks, patents, and designs require registration in order to be protected. And you should ensure that all appropriate registrations are made in that country before your products are sold. Think about recording your IP rights with the General Administration of Customs. So these, the customs people examine goods coming into and leaving China, and they have the authority to protect IP rights by seizing infringing goods. And if you do suspect your IP rights are being infringed, it may be appropriate to retain an investigator in China to do some research. Our firm does engage a number of agents to do this, and you can ensure that any investigator abides by the Chinese law, including privacy and anti-bribery laws, and they have a reputation for being discreet. And finally, it is usually most appropriate to instruct Chinese lawyers to take legal action, and it is likely that they have established the necessary relationships with the government officials, law enforcement, and political groups to effectively prosecute and enforce the brand rights. So here are some questions that you might want to consider asking yourself and how this applies to your business. There are three key things, really. So the IP ownership. Is your IP, your process, your product formulation, your trademarks, your artwork actually owned by you or the business owner? Make sure that the agreement with each consultant actually does assign your business the rights to actually use those IP. The freedom to operate. Will your commercial use of the IP fall foul of existing registered or unregistered third-party IP rights? Make sure you conduct searches for unregistered and registered IP rights through the patent, design, and trademark registration systems. If not, or if you're unsure, then you can ask a law firm to conduct searches to confirm that the use of the product and brand name will not conflict with existing IP rights of third parties in China. The risk associated with failing to perform clearance searches is that you can be forced to cease your commercial activities in China, and then you can be sued and have to pay legal costs or surrender up branded products or pay lost profits. And finally, in terms of IP protection, has your IP been adequately protected by way of a trade secret or by an IP registration process that we've discussed today? Make sure you register your trademarks early. If your product formulation is new and requires top-tier protection, make sure you file a patent application prior to publicly disclosing or commercially using the product. And in the absence of a conflicting third-party right, you should consider how best to protect the exported product and brand name. In the case of brand names, they are best protected by way of that country's trademark registration system, but there are times when having a registration in Australia is also just as effective. So King & Wood Mallesons is the only global law firm headquartered out of Asia that delivers a full service IP offering in litigation transactions and advisory work across the various IP mechanisms we discussed today. We manage major trademark portfolios, commercialize IP from an early stage for innovations, and we also do major IP asset transactions and strategic patent disputes. Oh, sorry, we've flipped through. We have a renowned litigation team with extensive experience in patent, trademark, and copyright disputes in both the domestic market and overseas through our global connections across 30 offices, many of which are actually in China itself. And otherwise, that concludes my presentation. These are my details if you have any questions and want to get in touch and have a quick chat about IP.
Thank you so much, Diane, and some very important information there. You know, legalities and protecting your IP, very, very important before entering any market, not just China.
Correct.
Look, so that concludes all our presentations. We hope everyone still online, learn some insights and especially this is a journey. I think it's not going to happen overnight. If you looking to enter the China market, it can take, a year, longer. And there's other markets out there that are actually take even longer to enter, with customs procedures and so on and so forth. So look, lots of opportunities, as many of the presenters said, depends on the products. Chilled or frozen product will be a little bit difficult to send to China at the moment because of the shortage of reefers. So yes, I think keep that in mind. Talk to the experts. FIAL is here also to help. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you once again to all our presenters. We look forward to ongoing, to our ongoing collaboration and working together with you to help more Australian exporters moving forward. We will send copy of presentations or a minimized version of the presentations to all that attended the event, and also contact details for all presenters as well too. So thank you again. Take care and see you soon.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you very much.